A doctor received a call to attend to a 5-year-old girl. When she arrived at the location, she found her own husband, who was supposed to be on a business trip. On a quiet morning in Merida, Yucatan, Dr. Natalie, a dedicated and highly respected doctor in the community, was preparing for another day of work. Silence was her companion as Grayson, her husband, was on a business trip. He was a highly respected lawyer and was invited to many events and conferences around the country due to his talent in the legal field. This particular day promised to be like any other for Natalie, filled with consultations and medical care for her patients. However, she couldn't help but feel a pang of loneliness, a void left by Grayson's absence, who was not only her life partner, but also her greatest support. The phone rang, breaking the morning calm. It was the on-call doctor from her work. He said there was a very sick little girl needing urgent help. Quickly, she grabbed her emergency bag, put on her coat, and left the house. Upon arriving at the house, she was greeted by a woman who identified herself as the girl's nanny. Natalie noticed that the girl was not well and began to provide medical care. It was at this moment that she saw a male figure appearing down the hallway. She was shocked. It was Grayson. He looked tired, his eyes marked by a sleepless night, but when he saw Natalie, his expression turned to shock and despair. "Natalie, how are you here?" "I should be asking you that," Natalie replied, her voice firm but clearly shaken by the surprise and growing suspicion. "You should be on a business trip, Grayson. What are you doing here?" Grayson took a step forward. "Natalie, I can explain," he began, but was interrupted by the nurse who started administering medication to the girl. He was holding Aurora, now stabilized but still weak. As soon as the nurse left, taking Aurora to the ambulance, Natalie confronted Grayson, demanding answers. "Grayson, I need you to explain now. What is happening here? Who is Aurora to you?" Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the tension of a heart preparing for the impact. At that moment, the ambulance attendant said the vehicle was ready to take the girl to the hospital. Natalie maintained professionalism and left with the girl. Meanwhile, Grayson made a phone call. "We have a problem. My wife discovered the girl's existence. We know what's at stake here. If this goes public, our reputation, our position in the city," Grayson said urgently, the worry clear in his voice. The man on the other end replied, "This couldn't have happened. If people find out, we are respected men, Grayson. People would be shocked if they knew about the girl. Everything we worked for, our careers, could collapse in an instant." He spoke with concern. There was a pause, and Grayson responded, "We need a plan to ensure this stays between us. No one else can know about Aurora," he said apprehensively. "I'll think of something. For now, keep your wife away from the matter as much as possible. We can't afford any more surprises," the man said firmly, the determination in his voice making it clear they would do whatever was necessary to protect their secrets. "Understood," Grayson agreed, the conversation ending with a promise to keep the truth about the girl hidden, a secret that threatened not only their personal lives but also their careers and reputations in the community. Aurora's life was a secret kept under lock and key, and its discovery could bring truths to light, truths that would have consequences. Grayson was entangled in a web of lies that could directly affect his life. As she monitored Aurora's treatment, Natalie observed the girl closely. She had a birthmark on the nape of her neck just like Grayson's. The resemblance was undeniable, an exact copy of Grayson's. Additionally, during the examination, Natalie noticed the same allergic reaction to a common medication that Grayson had. The weight of the situation enveloped her like a dense fog, her suspicions growing at an alarming rate. How could it be a coincidence? The birthmark, the allergy, they were too intimate details to be mere similarities. She concluded, Aurora was Grayson's daughter. At that moment, Natalie received a call from Grayson. He sighed and said, "Aurora is the daughter of someone. I was helping take care of her. I didn't tell you because..." He paused, gathering strength. "Because I knew you would be upset with me for not telling you earlier. I was trying to protect everyone, keep everything under control until I could resolve everything. I wanted to tell you, I swear I did. But things kept getting more complicated and I just didn't want to burden you. She doesn't have a mother, and Aurora's father is alone, and I support him. I try to protect the girl." "Protect? Or protect yourself?" Natalie questioned, her voice rising in intensity. "Do you think you protect me by keeping me in the dark?" Grayson, you chose to lie, chose to keep me out of this. How do you think that makes me feel? Her words were sharp, cutting the space between them with a precision that made clear the deep cut Grayson's omission had caused. Grayson replied, "It wasn't a lie, Natalie. It was an omission, yes, and I deeply regret it. I was trying to do what I thought was best. I didn't want you to worry about anything else. Your workload is already heavy, and I just thought I could handle it all alone." Natalie responded, "You thought wrong, Grayson." Her voice lowered, laden with hurt and disappointment. "What you are doing to me, this hurts, Grayson." As night fell over Merida, Natalie found herself facing the moment she had anticipated with a mix of fear and an imperative need for clarity. The dinner with her husband was a silent event. The words exchanged only enough to fill the space, but not the growing chasm between them. Finally, Natalie mustered the courage to confront Grayson. "We need to talk about Aurora," Natalie began, her voice firm, but her hands betraying the tension she felt, fidgeting restlessly with each other. Grayson looked at her, his eyes darkened with worry, knowing the moment of truth had arrived. "I know she is your daughter, Grayson. The evidence, the birthmark, the allergy, it's too much of a coincidence. Why can't you just admit it?" Natalie pleaded for honesty, each word laden with a pain she struggled to keep under control. Grayson sighed, a sound heavy with deep anguish, before responding. "Natalie, I understand why you would think that, but you are wrong. Aurora is not my daughter. She is just a child I came to know whom I promised to help, nothing more." His gaze was steady, trying to convey sincerity, but Natalie could feel the omission in his words. "How do you expect me to believe that? After all the lies, the omissions, how can I trust your word now?" Natalie's frustration overflowed, each memory of broken trust adding weight to her doubts. Grayson stepped closer, trying to bridge the physical and emotional distance between them. "I know I was wrong not to tell you about Aurora from the beginning, and for that I am sorry. But I am telling you the truth now. Yes, I have a special affection for her for reasons that are not easy to explain, but she is not my daughter. I would never lie about something like that." His voice was pleading. "The resemblances between the two of you, Grayson, are undeniable. This is not a coincidence. How can you not see that?" Her voice was a mix of desperation and accusation. Seeking to unravel the mystery Grayson seemed so determined to guard. Grayson in turn seemed increasingly cornered, Natalie's questions digging deep into his conscience. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and confusion. "I see the resemblances, Natalie, of course I do. But that doesn't change the fact that she is not my daughter." His voice faltered, indicative of the internal struggle with the truth he could reveal. "Then what are you hiding from me? Why help this girl in secret? Why lie about where you were? All this, it suggests there is something more, something you are not telling me." Natalie pressed on, each word laden with a weight, seeking to break the barriers Grayson had built around himself. Grayson looked at Natalie, his eyes reflecting a whirlwind of emotions. I simply can't tell you, Natalie, not yet." His admission, though vague, was an acknowledgement that there was indeed more to the story than he had revealed. "It's complicated, more than you can imagine, and it's not just about me. It involves more people, risks I can't take right now." This revelation only served to increase Natalie's frustration, her mind racing through possible scenarios, each more worrying than the last. "How do you expect me to accept this, Grayson? How do you expect me to trust you when clearly there is something so big that you feel you need to hide from me?" The betrayal she felt was now accompanied by a deep concern, not just for her marriage, but also for Grayson's well-being and the role Aurora played in this whole story. Grayson seemed divided, tormented by the choice between protecting a secret and preserving his relationship with Natalie. "I ask you to trust me a little longer," he finally said, his voice a whisper of despair. "There are things at stake bigger than we can understand now. I promise that when I can, I will tell you everything." Natalie was consumed by confusion and pain. Grayson's revelations and half-truths only deepened Natalie's disappointment. They had met in college and fallen in love at first sight. They had a love for each other that Natalie believed was unbreakable. Now, after 5 years of marriage, that bond seemed more fragile than ever. She had always dreamed of starting a family with Grayson, but he always asked to postpone. That night, the reasons for those postponements began to make bitter sense to Natalie. "Why did you always ask to wait to have children?" Natalie questioned, her voice choked with pain and the realization of years of delays. Now I see. There was always another reason, wasn't there? Something you couldn't tell me. Grayson avoided her gaze, her words hitting him like blows. Natalie, I promise you, it is not what you are thinking. Aurora is not my daughter. I was just trying to help a child who needed me, he insisted. But his words sounded hollow even to him. Natalie's frustration was palpable, each word from Grayson increasing the sense of betrayal. How can I believe you when all I see are secrets and lies? You asked me to wait, to delay our dream of having children, and now this. How can I trust anything you say? Grayson felt cornered, his own truth suffocating him. I couldn't explain before. I still can't. But it has nothing to do with not wanting our own children, Natalie. It's complicated. It's about protecting everyone involved. He tried desperately to make her understand without revealing too much. Protecting who, Grayson? Because from where I stand, it looks like the only thing you are protecting are your own secrets, Natalie retorted, the bitterness coloring her words. The silence that settled was a testament to the state of their relationship, full of unanswered questions, of dreams postponed, and now of a distrust that threatened to engulf the love that once united them. Natalie wondered how things had come to this point, how the man she loved and shared such a noble vocation with could have become a stranger burdened with mysteries. The next morning, after a restless night, Natalie made her decision with painful clarity. Sitting at the kitchen table where they had shared many moments of happiness and plans for the future, she looked at Grayson with firm resolve in her eyes. I want a divorce, Grayson, she said, her voice steady, but her eyes revealing the emotional storm behind the apparent calm. Grayson felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under him. The word divorce echoed in his mind, a devastating blow he never imagined hearing. For a moment he desperately considered revealing the whole truth about Aurora, hoping to save his marriage. But then images of the girl and the weight of the consequences that the truth could bring to not only him, but to her and other people flooded his mind. Natalie, please think about this. We can't. I don't want us to end like this, he pleaded, his voice laden with emotion. But his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Natalie had built a wall around herself, a shield against more pain and disappointment. I've thought about it, Grayson, and I see no other way. Your refusal to trust me, that says it all, Natalie responded, each word like a nail in the coffin of their relationship. In the end, Natalie's decision to file for divorce remained unchanged. Grayson, devastated by her decision and by his own choices that led to this point, found himself trapped between the pain of losing Natalie and the fear of the consequences that the truth about Aurora could bring. Grayson realized the dilemma he was in. Thinking of you, of us, was what gave me strength to continue. But now, thinking of Aurora, I can't risk it. But how will I live without Natalie? Grayson reflected alone in the room. Lost in his thoughts, Grayson came to the conclusion that he could no longer live under the weight of these secrets. He picked up the phone and with trembling hands he made a call. When the man answered, he said, I can't live with this secret anymore, he began, his voice laden with palpable desperation. I've lost Natalie. I've lost everything. I can't keep carrying this burden. On the other end of the line, the man reacted with a mix of surprise and irritation. Are you out of your mind? He retorted, his harsh voice cutting through the air. You know what's at stake here. You know how hard we've worked to keep this under control. You can't just decide you can't handle it anymore. The insistence on maintaining the secret was evident, but Grayson had reached his limit. No, you don't understand. This secret, it's already cost me my marriage. It's already cost me my peace. I'm not the same man I was before, and I don't know if I can live with myself knowing I kept hiding the truth from the woman I love. Grayson's confession was a cry of despair, a plea for understanding in a sea of uncertainties. The man on the other end of the line sighed. Grayson, think about what you're doing. Think about the consequences. It's not just about you, it's about all of us. It's about the girl. Do you really want to expose all of this after all these years? Grayson responded. I just don't know anymore, but I know I can't keep going like this. We need to find another way, something that doesn't force me to live this lie. His declaration wasn't just about revealing the secret. It was a cry for help, a desire to find a solution that could bring some peace to his tormented heart. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. a silence that seemed to stretch for an eternity. "I'll think of something," the man finally said, his voice softer now, almost understanding. "But Grayson, you need to be prepared for the consequences. Once that door is opened, there's no closing it again." The conversation ended with those words, leaving Grayson alone with his thoughts, contemplating the uncertain future he now faced. Would he be able to handle the consequences of revealing the truth? And more importantly, would this decision bring him back to Natalie, or would it only be the beginning of more pain and suffering? Grayson's decision to confront the secret that had tormented him was a step towards redemption, but also a leap into the unknown. Aurora was a girl of singular beauty, her curly hair framing her face where large brown eyes shone with a mixture of curiosity and innocence. Despite her age, there was a seriousness in her gaze that suggested an early understanding of life's difficulties, perhaps a reflection of her own struggle with the health problems that had accompanied her since birth. From an early age, Aurora had faced a rare condition, a disease that affected her heart and required constant medical care. Her comings and goings to the hospital were frequent, almost becoming routine, but she faced each visit, each procedure, with a bravery that surprised everyone around her. Grayson had become a constant presence in these moments, a safe harbor in the whirlwind of doctors, nurses, and treatments. "Cammy, how are you feeling today?" Grayson asked during one of his visits, trying to infuse lightness into his voice despite the weight in his heart. Aurora smiled, a smile that lit up the room. "I'm fine, Grayson. The doctor said I'm as strong as a superhero," she replied, with a glint of pride in her eyes, even though her small body showed signs of fatigue. The relationship between Aurora and Grayson was marked by mutual tenderness and care. He read her stories of adventures and courage, stories that spoke of overcoming and hope, while she, with her fertile imagination, transported herself to worlds where the disease could not reach her. "One day, I will be the heroine of my own story," she would say, the determination in her voice defying the fragility of her condition. But behind Aurora's strength and resilience, there were moments of vulnerability, when the reality of her condition became too difficult to ignore. "I just wish I could be like other kids. I wish I could run and play without getting tired," she confessed in a whisper, in moments when the disease showed its cruelest face. Grayson, faced with these confessions, felt a mix of pain and admiration for the girl's strength, reinforcing his determination to protect her at all costs. Despite the challenges, Aurora had a contagious joy of living, a light that shone even on the darkest days. Grayson, facing the difficulties of unrevealed secrets and the consequences of his past choices, loved Natalie and didn't know how to live without her. Amid the emotional chaos that dominated his life, Grayson found himself at a crossroads, confronted by the weight of secrets kept under lock and key, and his unwavering love for Natalie, a love that now seemed to be crumbling before his eyes. The void left by Natalie's departure was immense, an abyss that widened every day, every moment he realized her absence. In Aurora he saw a ray of hope, a light that brightened the dark days, a child who despite all the challenges maintained a contagious joy of living. But this light was also a constant reminder of the decisions he had made and the consequences he now faced. The next day, Grayson was having lunch at a restaurant when he received a call. "Grayson, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," the man began, his voice filled with urgency. "The situation as it stands can't continue. We need to act, and I believe I found a solution. We'll move up Aurora's trip to the United States. Originally, we planned to send her next year, but given the circumstances, I believe it's best to speed things up," the man explained, each word heavy with the importance of the decision. "This will give us some breathing room and, hopefully, resolve things with your wife." Grayson felt a mix of relief and worry about the proposal. "But how are we going to do this? We need to be extremely discreet. We can't risk raising suspicion or exposing Aurora to danger," he responded, the concern evident in his voice. The idea of sending Aurora away was painful, but he knew that at the moment it might be the best option to protect her. "I've already thought about that," the man assured. "Everything will be done with the utmost discretion. We'll use trusted contacts and ensure Aurora is safe and well cared for. This time in the United States will be good for her, a chance to start in a new environment, away from all this drama." The confidence in his voice was comforting, but not entirely able to dispel the cloud of doubt and fear hanging over Grayson. "I understand. And Natalie, how do I explain this to her?" Grayson asked, the last sentence almost a whisper. The idea of discussing such a plan with Natalie brought a pain he didn't know if he was ready to face. "Don't worry about that now. Let's take it one step at a time. The most important thing is to ensure Aurora's safety. As for Natalie, when the time comes, we'll find the best way to explain everything," the man replied, trying to offer some comfort. Hanging up the phone, Grayson sat there, staring into the void of the place that once symbolized so much joy. The decision to send Aurora to the United States, though logical, weighed on his heart like lead. He knew it was a necessary step, but each decision that distanced Aurora from him was also deeply painful. While immersed in his thoughts, Natalie entered the restaurant and saw Grayson isolated in a corner. Observing him from a distance, Natalie noticed the tension in his shoulders. He seemed consumed by his thoughts, so absorbed that he didn't notice her presence. Seeing him so vulnerable, so full of worries, rekindled in Natalie a spark of concern she thought had been extinguished with the end of their marriage. Moved by an impulse she didn't fully understand, Natalie decided to seek answers from the only person who might have some idea of what was going on: Mr. Lincoln, Grayson's father, and a man of unwavering principles. Lincoln was a pastor, and as a religious leader he was known in his community as a pillar of virtue and moral guide. Grayson's family was deeply rooted in traditions and values, a stark contrast to the secrets and lies that now seemed to surround his son's life. When she found Lincoln, Natalie was visibly shaken, the worry clear in her voice and eyes. "Mr. Lincoln, I need to talk to you about Grayson," she began, hesitant. "I saw him today and he seemed very nervous. I'm worried. He's taking care of a girl in secret and I feel he might be being threatened by something or someone." Her words came out in a rush, marked by an anxiety she struggled to control. Lincoln listened with a grave expression, the weight of Natalie's words sinking deep. He knew his son well and knew that Grayson was a man with a good heart, who would do anything to help someone in need. However, the idea that he might be involved in something dangerous, or that he was being threatened, was something Lincoln couldn't ignore. "Natalie, I appreciate you coming to me. I'm as surprised as you are. Grayson never mentioned anything about a girl. But are you sure about this? How do you know?" Lincoln asked, trying to process the information. "I saw the girl, Mr. Lincoln, and Grayson confirmed he was taking care of her. But he never explained why, and now, seeing him like this, so distressed, I can't help but worry," Natalie explained, the fear and concern for Grayson, despite everything, still very present. "I fear what all this might mean. What could happen to him if he is indeed in danger?" Lincoln nodded, a gesture of understanding. "Natalie, I promise I will talk to Grayson. We need to understand what's happening and ensure he's safe. If there is something threatening my son, or if he's in a situation he can't control, then we need to help him no matter what." The determination in his voice was unwavering, a reflection of his faith and unconditional love for his son. Natalie listened to Lincoln's words, knowing he was a man of faith, someone who believed in the power of prayer and in people's ability to overcome their adversities. "I will try to stay calm, Mr. Lincoln, but it's difficult knowing Grayson might be facing something serious," she admitted, the internal struggle evident in her expression. "I know, Natalie, and your concern is a sign of your care for him. But remember, Grayson has a family that loves him, friends, and a community that supports him. Together we are strong, and together we can help him overcome any challenge he's facing," Lincoln replied, his voice carrying a weight of conviction. "And most importantly, we have faith. Faith gives us strength in moments of uncertainty. I promise you we will get to the bottom of this. I will talk to Grayson, understand what's happening, and take the necessary steps," Lincoln assured, the determination in his voice projecting a confidence that Natalie desperately needed to feel. "But for now, it's important that we stay calm and not let anxiety get the best of us. Excessive worry can blind us to solutions." Natalie left the meeting with Lincoln feeling a bit more hopeful, despite her persistent worry. In the midst of this web of concerns and secret plans, Grayson received a message that made his heart race. The time had come. The message was clear and direct, leaving little room for doubt or hesitation. "Everything is ready for Aurora's departure to the United States. Take her to the airport tonight." There was no signature, but it didn't need one. Grayson knew exactly who it was from and the weight those words carried. Grayson's mind was in a whirlwind. On one hand, he was relieved to know that the preparations to protect Aurora were complete, that she would be on her way to a new beginning, far from the shadows surrounding them. On the other hand, the reality of parting with the girl, who had somehow become part of his family, weighed heavily on his heart. He looked at Aurora, playing quietly on the living room floor, unaware of the complexities and dangers of the adult world. How could he explain that soon she would be embarking on a journey to an unknown place, far from him, far from everything she knew? With a deep sigh, Grayson approached Aurora, squatting down to her eye level. "Aurora, dear, I need to tell you about a great adventure you're going to start," he began, trying to keep his voice steady and optimistic. Curiosity lit up the girl's eyes, and she stopped playing, attentive to Grayson's words. "You're going on a very special trip to a place where you'll see new things and make new friends," he continued, each word carefully chosen to paint the imminent departure as a positive adventure. As Grayson explained, he couldn't help but notice the mix of excitement and nervousness in Aurora's eyes. She was brave, no doubt, but the idea of a big change was frightening even to the bravest. "But Ale, are you coming with me?" Aurora's voice trembled slightly with the question. Grayson felt a tightness in his heart. "Dear, I would love to go with you, but you'll have a very special person waiting for you on the other side. I'll be here cheering for you and waiting to hear about all your new adventures," he replied, the promise in his words tinged with silent pain. The time that followed was a blur of preparations. Grayson packed Aurora's things, each item a reminder of the life they had shared, however brief it had been. He wanted to make sure she had everything she needed, but what he really wanted to give her, security, stability, and the constant presence of someone who loved her, seemed beyond his reach at that moment. Meanwhile, Natalie, driven by a mix of concern and determination, decided to go to Aurora's house in search of answers. Upon arrival, her heart raced when she saw Grayson and the girl, Aurora, with suitcases being carefully placed in the car. There was a palpable tension in the air, an urgency in Grayson's movements that Natalie had never seen before. It was clear they were leaving, but where? And why? The questions piled up, increasingly urgent, increasingly distressing. At that moment, Natalie made an impulsive decision which seemed the only viable option. She decided to follow them. The journey seemed endless, but finally the car stopped. They had arrived at an airport. Natalie parked at a distance that allowed her to observe without being seen. Grayson and Aurora sat on a bench and he gave her a hug and a kiss on the forehead. He knew that what he was doing was for her good, but doubt and uncertainty tormented him. Was he making the right choice? Would Aurora really be safe and happy in her new life? Grayson, hugging Aurora, whispered words of encouragement and love. "You will be amazing, Aurora. And remember, I'm always with you here," he said, placing her hand over her heart. Aurora hugged him back tightly before turning to embark on the greatest adventure of her life. Suddenly, the scene was interrupted by the appearance of a man who approached them. Before Grayson could react, Aurora let go of his hand and ran towards the newcomer with an enthusiasm reserved for someone of intimate and profound importance. "Daddy," she cried, her voice filled with relief and love as she threw herself into the man's arms. The embrace they shared was one of those rare and pure moments, full of emotions. The man had his back turned and Natalie couldn't see who it was. The man responded, "Hello, my daughter," and knelt down to hug Aurora, addressing her with a tenderness that overflowed in his words. He kissed her on the forehead, a gesture so laden with affection and protection that for a moment, Natalie felt like an intruder, witnessing such a private and significant moment. The revelation that Aurora had a father and that it wasn't her husband brought Natalie a sense of relief. Then, holding the man's hands firmly, Aurora looked up with eyes shining with fear and uncertainty. "I'm scared to leave. I don't want to be away from you," she confessed, her trembling voice revealing the vulnerability of her young heart. "Besides, there's no one to take care of me there. I don't know anyone. Please, I want to stay here." Her words were a plea, a supplication to remain in the only world she knew, beside the people she loved. The man knelt to her eye level, holding her hands with a gentleness that contrasted with the complicated situation they found themselves in. "My dear, I know this is hard, and I would give anything to change the circumstances that brought us here," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of pain and resolve. "But I promise you, This is for your own good. We will always be connected, no matter the distance. And you will meet incredible people who will take care of you with all the love you deserve." Natalie, observing the scene, wondered, who was this man who clearly loved Aurora so much but was sending her away? And how did Grayson fit into all this? The numerous unanswered questions wove a new web of mysteries in her mind. The undeniable physical resemblances between Grayson and Aurora, the identical birthmark, the shared allergy. How could these very specific and intimate details be mere coincidences? As she watched the man from behind, a disturbing sense of familiarity began to infiltrate her thoughts. There was something about him, perhaps in the way he moved or the posture he maintained, that evoked a distant memory, an echo of recognition she couldn't immediately place. Natalie strained to get a better view, moving discreetly to obtain a different angle, but the man remained with his back turned, an enigma she couldn't unravel. Who was this man? And more importantly, what was his connection to Grayson and Aurora? The mystery was a labyrinth of secrets she was determined to uncover. When the unknown man finally turned around, revealing a face Natalie never expected to find in this situation, the shock hit her like lightning. "It can't be," she whispered to herself in disbelief. Her legs trembled, and the discovery shook her world, leaving her on the edge of an abyss of confusion and despair. "This doesn't make sense," she continued, a desperate attempt to deny the reality before her eyes. The impact of this discovery left her horrified, forcing her to question everything she thought she knew about the people in her life. The man whom Aurora called Daddy was Mr. Lincoln, Grayson's father. Her father-in-law was not the man of integrity he appeared to be. He had a daughter outside of his marriage and was hiding it from everyone with Grayson's help. The image of Lincoln, always so upright, a pillar of virtue and morality in his community and family life, crumbled before Natalie's eyes, leaving her in a state of profound shock. "It can't be Mr. Lincoln," Natalie murmured to herself, her mind struggling to accept what her eyes saw. How could a man who preached integrity, honesty, and was respected by everyone around him have kept a daughter from an extramarital affair hidden? Natalie remembered the countless times Mr. Lincoln had spoken about the importance of fidelity in marriage. Now those words seemed to echo in her mind with a cruel irony. "How could he?" Natalie asked in an anguished whisper. When Mr. Lincoln finally turned around, his eyes met Natalie's, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. The recognition was immediate, but what followed was a wave of palpable tension. "You knew," Natalie began, her voice trembling but impregnated with firm accusation. "I was at your house, worried, seeking answers, and you lied to me." The accusation was direct, and Natalie's words cut through the air with a precision that left little room for misunderstanding. Lincoln, on his part, seemed momentarily stunned, surprise and denial dancing in his eyes as he tried to process Natalie's words. "What are you saying, Natalie? I don't know what you're talking about," Lincoln replied, his voice faltering slightly under the weight of the accusation. His attempt to deny knowledge of the situation only served to heighten the tension between them. "Aurora is your daughter," Natalie then said, the revelation coming out as a breath, heavy with implications and judgment. Lincoln's reaction was one of pure dismay, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face as he struggled to maintain his composure. Aurora, until then a silent observer, looked from one adult to another, trying to understand the words and tensions surrounding her. Her expression reflected an innocent confusion, a child trying to make sense of a situation beyond her comprehension. "Daddy, what's happening? How do you know the doctor who took care of me in the hospital?" Lincoln, faced with Aurora's innocent question, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on his shoulders. He shifted his gaze from the girl to Natalie, seeking in her face some sign of how to proceed. He felt a mix of pain, accusation, and a search for truth that left him momentarily speechless. "Daddy, why is Dr. Natalie here? And why is she angry?" Aurora insisted, her small voice bringing a new wave of urgency to the situation. Lincoln, realizing he could no longer avoid the truth, took a deep breath, searching for the strength and the right words to explain a reality he knew would change everything. "Aurora, my dear, there are many things we need to talk about," Lincoln began, his voice trembling. "About Dr. Natalie, she is a very special person. What you need to know now is that everyone here loves you very much, and we are trying to do what is best for you. You will board the flight, and everything will be fine." He paused, struggling against the emotion threatening to break his voice. Board the flight to where, Lincoln? You were sending your own daughter away? She is just a child. Natalie's words overflowed with a mix of shock and accusation, echoing through the space between them with an intensity that made Aurora look from one adult to another, trying to grasp the meaning behind the palpable tension. Please, keep your voice down, Lincoln responded quickly, a flicker of panic crossing his face. No one can know she is my daughter. It's complicated, Natalie, he continued, his voice now a whisper, urgent, trying to contain the scandal that a loud revelation could cause. This is absurd, Lincoln. How can you think it's right to hide the truth this way, and sending Aurora away, as if she could simply disappear without causing pain or questions? Natalie couldn't believe the logic Lincoln was trying to impose on the situation, her mind rejecting the idea that the solution to the secret was to send Aurora away, a girl who clearly needed the love and support of her family. Enough! Let's put an end to this, shouted Grayson. The emotion weighed on every word as he began to reveal the burden he had been carrying in silence. I have taken care of Aurora in secret all these years, he said, looking directly at Lincoln, his voice trembling but determined, and I can't take it anymore. I don't want her to go to the United States. She's just a child and wants to stay with us. Aurora, holding Grayson's hand, looked at him with big, hopeful eyes. Her expression mirrored the vulnerability and desire to stay with those she considered her family. I don't want to leave either, Grayson. I want to stay with you, she said, her small but firm voice conveying the sincerity of her feelings. Grayson continued, We can't just send her away as if she can be erased from our lives. She means everything to me. Hiding her existence, hiding our love and care for her, it's destroying us. We need to find another way. His declaration was a plea. Lincoln, confronted with the pain and passion in his son's words, seemed to waver, the mask of certainty and control beginning to crack. For a moment, the weight of the consequences of his decisions seemed to genuinely hit him, the internal conflict evident in his gaze. I just wanted to protect our family, Grayson, but maybe I was wrong about what that really means, Lincoln admitted, his voice low, a tacit acknowledgement of the pain his actions had caused. It was a painful admission, a crack in the facade of a man who had always prided himself on his strength and wisdom. Grayson, seizing the moment of vulnerability in his father, insisted, We need to do what is right for Aurora, not what is easy or what will protect our image. She deserves to grow up surrounded by love, not secrets. Let's find a solution together as a family. Grayson took Aurora's hand, and together they left the airport, leaving behind the weight of unspoken secrets and difficult decisions. Grayson's decision to no longer hide his sister, to bring Aurora openly into his life, was a courageous step towards an uncertain but hopeful future. He knew that the road ahead would be full of challenges, but the conviction that he was doing the right thing gave him strength. Natalie, observing the interaction between Grayson and Aurora, felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Grayson's determination to protect and care for Aurora, to face the consequences of bringing the truth to light, touched her deeply. I will help, Natalie said, her voice carrying a mix of determination and affection. I will come back home, Grayson. We will take care of Aurora's health together. Her offer was a gesture of reconciliation, a promise of support and a new beginning for them as a family. Aurora, holding Grayson's hand on one side and looking at Natalie with bright eyes of gratitude on the other, simply said, Thank you. There was a simplicity in her gratitude, but the depth of emotion behind those words was profound. She was beginning to understand that she was surrounded by people who truly cared for her, who were willing to face adversities to ensure her well-being. When they arrived home, Grayson felt a sense of relief and renewal. From now on, I won't hide my little sister anymore, Grayson stated, looking at Natalie and Aurora. We will face whatever comes together as a family. Natalie, moved by Grayson's honesty and vulnerability, felt inspired by his strength. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that there would be obstacles and perhaps even external judgments. However, the promise of building a life together, of caring for Aurora as their own family, filled her with renewed hope. We're in this together, she said, placing her hand on Grayson's, a gesture of unity and commitment. And so, at that moment, a new family began to form, a family not defined only by blood ties, but by the shared commitment of care, love, and protection. Aurora, at the center of this circle of love, represented the promise of new beginnings, and the certainty that no matter the adversities, they would find a way to overcome them together. As Grayson, Natalie, and Aurora adjusted to a new life together, full of hope and new promises, Lincoln faced the harsh consequences of his past actions. His revelation as an adulterer and father of a child out of wedlock shook the community that had always respected him, plunging him into the center of a scandal that challenged the integrity he had always preached. The situation was exacerbated by the fact that Aurora had health problems and Lincoln's intention to send her away, which increased the disappointment of the community, friends, and family. This revelation not only strained family relationships, but also placed Grayson in a difficult position, forcing him to choose between loyalty to his father and honesty with his wife, almost costing him his marriage. Lincoln found himself haunted by remorse, realizing the unfair burden he had placed on his son and questioning the values he wished to impart. He began to understand that true redemption would require a deep change, not just facing the judgment of others, but also accepting and unconditionally loving Aurora, as well as repairing the damage caused to the most important relationships in his life. Moreover, his wife was extremely disappointed with Lincoln's betrayal. It was then that he decided to come clean. In front of the congregation, Lincoln stepped forward, facing everyone's gazes. He took the microphone and addressed his wife with a sincerity she had not seen in years. "My dear, I have wronged you tremendously. I got involved with a sex worker. She left as soon as she had the child. I hid the truth out of fear of losing your respect and love, and the community's respect. But it has cost much more than I could have imagined. I apologize from the bottom of my heart." Then he spoke to the church members. "I have failed all of you. I have failed to live by the values I preached so much. Please accept my sincere apologies. I am committed to repairing the damage I have caused." For Grayson, the encounter was particularly charged. "Son, I placed on you a burden no father should impose. My actions almost destroyed your family, and for that I don't know if I can ever make amends. But I am here, asking for your understanding and forgiveness," Lincoln expressed, the pain in his eyes reflecting the sincerity of his words. Turning to Natalie, Lincoln acknowledged the impact of his choices. "Natalie, you have shown incredible strength and compassion. I lied to you, and yet you stood firm by Grayson and Aurora. I owe you a gratitude that words cannot express, and I humbly ask for your forgiveness," he said, gratitude mixed with remorse in his voice. Finally, kneeling before Aurora, Lincoln looked at his daughter with a new resolve. "Aurora, my dear daughter, I have failed you in ways that will take time to understand. But I want you to know that from now on I will be present in your life. Not as a shadow, but as your father, who loves you unconditionally," Lincoln promised, his voice choked with emotion. "I will no longer hide you. You are part of who I am, and it's time everyone knows the wonderful daughter I have." Aurora looked at her father with gratitude and hugged him. She felt protected and embraced by him. After what happened, Lincoln's life was not the same. Despite his wife's forgiveness, Lincoln could no longer continue as a pastor and now works in the commercial sector. His story is proof that wrong decisions can lead to major upheavals in our lives. However, when we make the right choices, speak the truth, and reconcile with those we have hurt, we can start a new chapter in our lives. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. This helps me continue sharing amazing stories every day. Don't miss the next surprising story that now appears on your screen. Thank you very much for your support. See you soon.